The digital clock on the corner of the desk quietly announced the arrival of 10 in the morning. Normally, most of the staff would be out and about by now, but the entire police department was in turmoil today. It was only to be expected, with a key figure from the Kirijo Group visiting on unusual business.
Kirijo, huh?
The Kirijo Group was a major trading firm, synonymous with Japan. They had links to all areas of business. Not a day could go by in the city without hearing their name. The clock that had struck 10 bore the logo of Kirijo Electronics, and KJ was the carrier for the cell phone provided to every member of the force. A few days ago, this same Kirijo Group had a seemingly insane proposal. The document was hundreds of pages, but a brief summary would read, "We wish to collaborate with the police on an unofficial department for eliminating monsters."
Well, it does happen from time to time. Famous businessmen end up advocating cultish nonsense in pursuit of their ambitions.
Upon consideration, it was decided that the Kirijo Group should be invited in to give their pitch. Of course, there was no intention of spending tax money on the outlandish proposal. The police's interest in humoring the Kirijo Group lay elsewhere. The Kirijo Group had offered an incentive whereby if the police agreed to the meeting, they would provide a detailed list of the ergonomic research lab's artifacts as well as actual samples. It was this that drove the officials' decision. For there had been dark rumors Bandai? Namco? About the Kirijo Group over the last 10 years. While still a family-run business, some said that old man Koetsu Kirijo had delved into paranormal research and was performing inhumane experiments. The police collected enough evidence to test the rumor and had prepared many times to force an investigation. But every time the investigation came to nothing due to the group exerting hidden pressure, frustrating those working on the case to no end. The investigation's prime target was the infamous Ergo Research, the Kirijo Ergonomics Research Lab. Exposing the Kirijo Group's dark side had been a dream of public safeties for 10 years now. And now Kirijo seemed willing to hand over Ergo Research's tightly guarded secrets on a silver platter. No one knew the reason for this sudden about-face, but neither did anyone think of turning them down. They agreed to the summit not to hear out whatever proposal Kirijo was offering, but as a stepping stone toward unearthing their past crimes. Time passed, and the agreed-upon time in the afternoon came. The man was tasked with watching over and bringing in the artifacts from the Kirijo Group. Though he would not speak with the guest, the police's plan afforded him a major responsibility, one that gave him something like a leading role. It wasn't long before the Kirijo car arrived in the underground Port Cochere? Sure. The staff there to receive the guests only shrugged at the long black limousine that would have turned heads on the main roads. One of the youngest recruits looked towards the man and asked a question.
Chief, what's with that car?
But that was the least of the surprises in store. When the Kirijo Group representative stepped out of the limousine, she was revealed to be a beautiful young woman, no older than a university student. This is very weird, the way they're presenting Mitsuru's story, not exactly. It sounds like Mitsuru is telling the story, but she's trying to tell the story from the perspective of the dude. Not only that, but she had attendants dressed in what could only be described as maid uniforms? Is it Junpei in a maid outfit? All of them were young women roughly her age. Never mind, it's Yukari in a maid outfit. The scene mesmerized the various dignitaries present to greet her.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I am Mitsuru Kirijo, representing the Kirijo Group. It's nice to meet you.
Her brisk greeting radiated poise. From there, she shook hands with the assembled dignitaries in a manner that showed she was no stranger to social gatherings.
She's the company rep? Really?
The young recruit who was sneaking looks out the corner of his eye muttered in spite of himself.
Their proposal said the rep who's coming today would be the leader of this new unit, but I thought it was supposed to be some hardcore armed response team, and she's leading it? Well, I guess it's better than some meathead.
And then Mitsuru is like, and this is the one who will be leading the team. Akihiko. Just Akihito. Words, Akihiko. I can't talk.
Shut up and hold your position.
But in truth, the man felt the same way. Certainly, this monster extermination unit would never be incorporated, but even if it were, he was sure this wisp of a girl could never do such work. Who on earth wrote this? Eventually, the dignitaries entered the agency along with Miss Kirijo. All of them wore lopsided smiles due to the young beauty's unexpected appearance, but that would do for now. The dignitaries were only there to receive her. Their true objective was loaded in the truck parked behind the limousine. The documents and artifacts of Ergo Research.
All right, start bringing them in.
Roger, sir.
At the man's signal, his trained subordinates surrounded the Kirijo truck. They formed a line, smoothly passing boxes from man to man into the building. The articles were of various sizes, with even a few that came in oversized metallic containers for aerial transport. The Kirijo Group had warned them not to handle these things carelessly until explanations were forthcoming. But in truth, the department was already prepared to begin a forensics investigation of the objects and even send them to the lab.
Are you sure it's okay for us to open these? The instructions said not to.
It won't be a real investigation if we let them hamstring our procedures. Besides, I can't think of anything they could send us that we couldn't handle.
That just proves that you have a very small brain.
Unless there's real monsters inside these things.
The articles were brought in silence. The operation only lasted about 15 minutes. The man himself received the last item, about the size of a jewelry box, and checked the truck to make sure nothing went overlooked before closing it up. That done, he turned and walked quickly towards the forensics room. Try though he might to maintain his composure, he couldn't contain the excitement he felt. For 10 years, the darkness of the Kirijo group had been a frustrating legend, like mist between the department's fingers. Their chance to investigate and expose them was here at last. If even the slightest evidence matched the DNA of those who had gone missing or the victims of the unsolved cases, victory would be theirs. The man tried to tamp down his exhilaration and took another look at the small box he held. There was no upper lid on the box. A pedestal-like protrusion at its center held a number of small circular trinkets. Their usage was completely unknown. What kind of research produced these? Just as the man was about to hand the box to the window clerk, he saw a wedding ring on the clerk's finger and came to a realization.
Are these rings?
We're not sure yet.
The man put on... Was that Sam Riegel right there? The man put on some protective latex gloves and tried one of the objects on. After looking at it from every angle, its color and shape seemed to be nothing but ordinary. If it was meant to be jewelry, it wasn't very attractive. The man couldn't picture scientists in lab coats slaving away in a lab to create rings like this. The moment that unlikely possibility came to mind, the man felt somewhat embarrassed by his ignorance of fashion and accessories. What? But as soon as... That's such an unnecessary bit of text. But as soon as he reached for the small box to put the ring back inside, darkness suddenly fell.
Please step away from the door.
The voice echoing in the man's mind brought him back to reality. He took a few steps away from the door, as directed, and stood ready. Step away from the door. The more he thought about it, the stranger the order seemed. How did she know he was so close to the door that she wasn't even in the room? Suddenly, a chill filled the area. In mere seconds, the entire door was coated in white.
Where'd this ice come from?
It had frosted over. The man couldn't believe his eyes, but the evidence was there in front of him. He could then hear a slight knocking sound, followed by a crack forming in the center. The door buckled under its own weight and crumbled with a sound that was like building blocks being pushed over. Standing just past it was the Kirijo woman. She walked over to the man with exquisite nonchalance. At her side was one of the maids she brought.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
We did give you fair warning, but it seems to have gone unheeded.
The man looked towards the ring shining on his finger.
Then this happened because we touched that box? What is this thing?
That ring gives its bearer an unstable form of pseudo-potential and allows anyone to experience the Dark Hour.
The Dark Hour?
The box itself seems to be a failed recreation of the Dark Hour. The effect radius is small, and it malfunctions when improperly handled.
The Dark Hour. He remembered that phrase coming up in documents the Kirijo group had sent. If he recalled correctly, it was defined as a hidden time unable to be experienced by normal people, a time where everything stood still. According to the documents, it seems to have occurred every night at midnight for about 10 years, until spring 2010, as if it was forcing its way into normal time. Before now, it seemed like pure fantasy. But could this silent darkness be the very same thing?
So you're saying those stories in that document, that occult-sounding stuff was actually for real?
All of a sudden, Ryuji busts into the room. At that moment, a voice suddenly echoed from beyond the hallway, past the broken door.
Who's there?
The man reflexively called out in alarm, realizing that the fear had not yet died down. What emerged from the darkness was the young recruit who had greeted the guests earlier and had been helping with bringing in the artifacts. He was staggering as if severely drunk.
Chief! Hey, are you alright?
The man started to rush to his side, but the Kirijo woman silently stopped him. She stood between the two as if protecting the man.
What? He's my...
Before he could finish, a surprising change overtook the recruit. The recruit fell to the ground with an agonized scream. A black tar-like substance began flowing from his every orifice. Ew.
What?
Akechi killed him. Killed his shadow. The ooze spread unnaturally across the ground and cohered into a glob. It rose up like a beast raising its head, and what looked like claws began to form. Its appearance showed clear signs that it possessed some malevolent will. The man thought again about the Kirijo group's initial proposal. We wish to collaborate with the police on an unofficial department for eliminating monsters. Without a doubt, this was what they were referring to. And the name that came up again and again was...
This is a shadow.
That it is. It's a monster that dwells in every person's heart. They usually can't manifest themselves this way, but it's quite common to see it happen during the dark hour.
So the research to make this happen artificially. That's what Kirijo has been experimenting with.
That did seem to be the extent of it. At the start.
At the start, the man couldn't prevent himself from shuddering, imagining the implications of her statement. With the second roar, the half-liquefied shadow suddenly took the form of some fell beast. But where the face should have been was nothing but a mask, giving it the bizarre appearance of two creatures stitched together. The young woman, for her part, seemed not in the least perturbed.
Kikuno, my things, please.
The maid stooped to reach something. The man wasn't sure where she had been carrying it, but she placed a sword in her master's hand. The blade was specially shaped, similar in design to a fencing saber.
You're going to fight it?
Stay back. This will all be over soon.
At that moment, as if understanding their conversation, the shadow squared itself and leapt towards the young woman. Its speed matched its beastly appearance. In the darkness of the room, the man found it difficult simply keeping his eye on it. The young woman did not move. Her sword remained lowered in the face of the shadow's advance. Of course, thought the man, an amateur like her could never react in time. However,
Artemisia!
At a word from the young woman, some unseen force slammed the shadow against a wall. The man momentarily doubted his own eyes. For it hadn't been the woman who repelled the monster, but a silhouette that suddenly appeared behind her. It looked as though the being enveloped in sublime light, contrasting the shadow's dark glow, was a woman wearing a majestic dress. The silhouette held up a hand towards the grounded shadow. Once again, the man felt freezing air fill the room. And with that, the shadow stopped moving, frost crystallized all over it, turning it into an ice sculpture within seconds. Only then did the young woman swing the sword in her hand.
Ha!
A white gleam arced through the air. Upon impact, the frozen enemy shattered like it had been crystallized sugar rather than ice. The victory was so one-sided that the man hesitated to call it a battle.
Are you all right?
The young woman turned towards the man. The sound of her boots hitting the floor gave him the jarring realization that she hadn't moved a single step during the fray. Seeing that he was at a loss for words, she gave him a gentle smile. It was all too much for the man. He actually felt relieved to be protected by this small woman. One thing was obvious. She had been through countless battles, much like the one he just witnessed.
Your fallen employee's life is in no danger, but he'll be very weak. Make sure he gets to a hospital. Should I make the arrangements?
No, I should at least handle that. It is a public security matter.
With a nod, the young woman approached the small box and manipulated it in a way he couldn't quite catch. The eerie yellow-green light began to fade. Moments later, the resilience and darkness faded too. The world had been restored. The man felt his body become suddenly lighter, causing him to breathe a sigh of relief. He hadn't realized until the pressure was gone that the air had been suffocating as if he had been underwater. There was a stir of movement in the room. The forensics team and assistant looked at the man and young woman, perplexed. The man took a quick look around. Fragments of the shattered door were strewn about. A young public security worker was lying unconscious nearby, and the Kirijo guest who had entered without anyone noticing held in her hand a drawn sword.
I'd be shocked too if I were them.
It occurred to him that if normal people couldn't sense the dark hour, the sudden change in circumstances may have seemed to them like some magic trick.
Excuse me, but this place is off limits to all unauthorized personnel.
Yeah, it's gotta be Sam Riegel.
Hey, what's going on here?
The forensic staff looked at the man helplessly.
It's all right. We had a little emergency.
Oh.
That aside, halt all examination of the relics they brought in. We'll wait for further instructions from the Kirijo group.
Huh? But you said...
If there are any boxes that are closed, don't force them open. Not if you don't want to come face to face with monsters.
Leaving the frowning forensics team behind him, the man quickly went into the hallway with the Kirijo woman.
I have to thank you for your help. And about the conference, I'll join in as well. It's been arranged so nothing you say would get through to the higher-ups.
If the young woman was surprised at what amounted to a confession of betrayal, she didn't show it.
Are you saying you will reconsider your plans?
I can't overlook anything as serious as this. I wouldn't be doing my job as public security if I did. But make no mistake, the things I saw today are proof of the sins the Kirijo group has committed. They can't be punished under the law, but now that they're known, atonement will be made in some shape or form.
Indeed. I never intended anything less.
You really put one over on us this time.
Never step to Mitsuru Kirijo.
Oh, there's no need to be coy. What happened today was no accident, was it? We'd never have believed the reports unless we saw it in person. That's why such a dangerous box had no lid. Am I wrong?
There was no lid. That's not possible. That box was classified as risk level 3. It should have been securely fastened.
The young woman fell silent, then gasped and gave the maid walking silently beside her a look.
Kikuno.
The maid continued without the slightest sign of remorse and left her master behind. Both the man and the young woman sighed at once.
Us guys in public security have a reputation for being tough. But it seems like you guys are no slouches yourselves.
The summit that was meant to be a perfunctory refusal took an unexpected turn. Promises were made to continue the talks. 6 months passed. After many opportunities to show the actual samples to the dignitaries were set up, the proposed special unit was established in mostly the form Kirijo requested. The security department, the Shadow Response Unit, it was the inauguration of the special unit that would, in time, be nicknamed the Shadow Operatives. I will place a bookmark. We only have like 5 minutes left in stream, so I don't think I'm going to get to another bookmark in that time. Indeed, the Shadow Operatives. I'm quite fond of the name. Not that I normally pay much heed to these things, but in this case I admit to being pleased. It started as sarcasm on the part of the higher-ranked personnel from the police. It could be taken to mean those who deal with shadows, but the real meaning is those who operate in the shadows. Not only is the unit unofficial, we have the difficult-to-credit job of exterminating monsters. Mostly, I suspect it was a dig at a group that disturbed the expected peaceful years before the older personnel's retirement. But Shadow Operative could also mean one who does unrewarded, albeit crucial work for society. It's a name truly befitting of this organization's goals. We're approaching the first anniversary of the Shadow Operatives' establishment. Though we're still at the level of basic investigation and laying groundwork, it seems a full-scale case has arisen.
Fighting is not our first option, but I'd be more reassured with you there.
Oh, you talking to my boy Akihiko? Yo, the Persona 3 music finally kicking in. Let's go.
We have a general idea of where it was taken. The Inaba area, where there were reports of suspected shadow activity last year.
Oh, so Mitsuru's story did that little intro for how the Shadow Operatives were made, and now we've already skipped past the hijacking, because she's talking about where Labris has been taken. So they don't retread the steps of Naoto's story. Good as it is to hear from an old reliable friend, I limit the call to a quick exchange of information.
I'll send you the precise location later. Sorry to call when you've just returned from a trip, but I'm relying on your assistance.
I close my cell and turn towards my colleague.
He's only just returned and he's going directly to the location from the airport. Akihiko never changes.
The man I was on the phone with just now was Akihiko Sanada. He's one of our non-permanent staff. Akihiko is an excellent Persona user, but beyond that, he's a skilled boxer. He's a friend of mine from high school who fought the shadows alongside me. I admire his strict determination to never neglect his training, but the extreme lengths he goes to can be rather inconvenient. After entering college, he accepted my invitation to be one of the founding Shadow Operatives, but it was his actions afterward that went above and beyond. Sure, I'll join, but if I'm going to use my strength professionally, I want to get my skills to a level I'm happy with first. Thus began his training expedition. He's not only wandering the country, he's traveling the entire world. I can't decide whether to be dumbfounded or impressed by his dedication to training. All of this is to say that he only just returned to Japan to take part in this operation. I give a wry smile and lean back in my chair. Seeing me relax, the girl watching nearby smiles. This is Aigis, known for her blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. Really? That's what she's known for? Not for the whole, being a robot thing? She's a sweet girl on the outside, but she has what it takes to be an important member of our squad.
Will we be able to find Labris? My sister?
When I look over at Aigis, her eyes are cast downward with a worried expression.
Will we be able to save her? Isn't that what you really want to ask?
She must have known once I called Akihiko in his backup. There is a possibility that we will have to fight Labris. Knowing that, it's not a great leap to imagine that in the worst case, she may have to be destroyed. And alas, it's true. If all else fails and our safety is at risk, with no other way to stop her, that option is on the table. Still,
Don't worry. As I mentioned to Akihiko, fighting Labris is not our priority. The reason I formed this Shadow Operative team is to save lives. We will find her, whatever it takes, and bring her back. We can do this.
Yes. I'm sorry to be so pessimistic.
Those feelings you have for Labris, you should tell her when you see her.
I will.
the monitor is showing certain data under multiple redundant encryptions. Kirijo Ergonomics Research Lab, confidential matters. There is, in fact, a reason I'm reviewing these materials that are normally securely concealed. Because 2 days ago on May 1st, I was unexpectedly dragged into a serious incident. Oh, maybe they are going to go over the hijacking. The passenger plane I was taking to Kagoshima was hijacked. There hasn't been a domestic hijacking for 10 years. The top brass of the police, afraid to make any mistakes, sent in the Shadow Operatives. The case itself was resolved quickly and all the culprits arrested. None of the passengers were harmed either. But the hijackers' true motive wasn't terrorism or political demands, as one would expect. I was surprised to find they were really after my cargo. It was a sealed box from the Ergonomics Research Lab. We were transporting it to Yakushima on that flight. No one thought that the risky hijacking could have been in pursuit of just the cargo, and as a result, one of the objects was stolen. The arrested suspects are all in police custody, but none of them have any memory of carrying out the crime. Someone was pulling their strings, and very probably using uncommon methods. Considering that Puppet Master was targeting Shadow-related cargo, I doubt they'll be easy to deal with. As for what was stolen, I just mentioned its name a moment ago. The 5th generation anti-shadow suppression weapon Labris is an older model from 2 generations ago. Since Shadow-related Ergo research documents were lost in an accident, we know little about Labris. She is an android, most likely a female version, just like Aegis. Well, yeah, it's a lot easier to get people on board with female versions of robots instead of dudes, I guess. That's normally what they go for. Gotta make more waifus if you can. But instead of a weapons loadout, she seems to have been fitted with some kind of experimental equipment. That's all we know. She has a giant axe of death. That seems like a pretty big, like, weapons thing, not just experimental. I think we're gonna have to wrap up here. I hate to wrap up in the middle of a thing again, but I mean, what am I gonna do? So we will get back to this point where it changes from the plane to this to pick up on Mitsuru's story. Ooh, stretch. I really hate having to leave them, like, in the middle of a scene like this, but the way they have structured the story in this game kind of leaves me with very little options. Also, I'm very hungry. It's still storming where I live, and I got stuff I gotta do tonight. I gotta get my tax stuff together. Fun being an adult. But yeah, that is going to be it for today. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed. We got into Mitsuru's story. Didn't make as much progress as I wanted because, like I said, I had to start late because of the power outage and all. But we're in here. We're in here. We've almost... Next stream, we should be able to finish Mitsuru and Akihiko's story, and maybe even Aegis's. So we'll have gone through all of the stories we have available once, and then I don't know if it's going to be like, go back to Narukami's story, if it's going to be like, hey, you can do the to-be-continued bits, or if it's going to reveal those 2 middle cards or what, but... We're coming up on 50%, so we're getting there. And then apparently we have an entire other story mode to go through. But hey, what are you gonna do? Yeah, that'll be it, though. If you want to catch these live, link to my Twitch channel description. I'd love to see you there, or keep watching on YouTube. I appreciate the support either way. Until next time, farewell.